I'm going to talk about package development. Very quick about me, because I have a lot to show you. My name is Marcel Pociot from Germany. I'm a managing partner and developer at a company called Beyond Code, and you can follow me on Twitter if you want, where I tweet about Laravel PHP-related stuff. All right, so why should you care about package development? So one reason would be you're from Belgium and you like postcards, but the bigger reasons, I think, would be like the main benefit, in my opinion, is you can concentrate on your core features or your core domain. So, for example, when you're working at a company that builds online shops and your boss comes in and wants you to build a CMS feature, then adding this CMS feature would not be a part of the core domain of your online shop business. I mean, it's not helping people directly to sell things online. So by moving this into a separate package, it becomes a lot easier to maintain it because now the CMS feature is its own core domain, and you can keep focusing on that piece of code in its own little bubble, and you don't have to care about what's going on in like the online shop around it. And once you do this and build like multiple packages, then you have the big benefit of being able to reuse these components and just pick the ones that you want to use in other projects. So if at the same company your boss comes in like half a year later and wants to add another CMS feature to a different shop, you can just go, oh yeah, I built this sometime, and just pick that package that built and add it to this other project of yours. And even if you can't use it for 100% and you have to adapt some things, it'll probably make your life a lot easier. It will make it faster that you develop these packages, these features. And the third benefit, in my opinion, is that you get documentation for free. I mean, as developers, I don't think we all love to write documentation, if I'm not mistaken. At least I'm not really loving it. But once you approach it from a documentation-driven development kind of side, and you see that you work on a package and you only see and write the documentation as if the user doesn't know anything about what's going on behind the scenes, it becomes a lot easier for your future self. So if you go back to the package in a couple weeks or a month, you just scan the documentation, you know what's going on. And also for your colleagues, and if you share it on GitHub, then for basically the rest of the world. So instead of just talking about how I approach package development, I thought I'm going to be a bit risky and build a package on stage. So the package we're going to build is called Laravel Badges, and it has two main features. So the first feature is, of course, we want to create badges. So it's like a gamification feature where I can say I want to grant a one-year membership badge to a user, and then I want to define a rule so that this badge should be associated with that user once he is a member for more than a year. So the way we're going to do this is we use a package boilerplate because I only got 30 minutes, so I'm not going to build everything from scratch. Then we use TDD because that's the way to go, right? And then we implement the package, and I'll go to publish it. All right, let's dive in. So you need to make this a bit bigger. There are a lot of resources on how you can get started with packages and have like these boilerplates. One thing that I built is called Laravel Package Boilerplate. It's at laravelpackageboilerplate.com. And it allows you to choose between different like templates when you want to create your package. One is a Laravel preset. It comes with things like service provider. It has some commented code that shows you how to add configs, publish assets, stuff like that. And you have a generic PHP package as well, which is what I'm going to use during this talk. And then once you are on this website, you can define the vendor name, the package name, your name as well, and this will then get generated in the package output. And one important thing is the license. So whenever you publish a package and want to maintain it as, or keep it open source, please always go and choose a license. If you don't have any license at all, it basically means you are not allowed to use this package. So if you find a package or a piece of code somewhere without a license, you are unable to use it, basically. And if you click on this question mark, it goes to a website called choosealicense.com, which helps you figure out which license you should use. All right. And then, yeah, if you fill this out, you can download the package as a zip file. I already did that because I don't want you to watch me do a composer install all the time. So this is the downloaded boilerplate. And what we have here is basically the composer JSON file. Is it big enough for everyone to see? Yeah? OK. And so this composer JSON file is basically what tells you, or what tells packages and composer, that these bunch of files make up a package that you can install into your application. So the important part is the name. So this is what you will use when you do a composer require, and then this package name. And since we want to build a Laravel-related package, I added 2 requirements and dependencies to my package. So one is Illuminate support. So we want to make use of things like a service provider and a facade in everything from version 5.8. And the other one is I'm going to use a package called Orchestra Test Bench. And this one allows you to test your package as if it already lives inside a Laravel application. I'm going to show that in a minute. And then we have the autoloading setup. So everything within the source directory is in the Beyond Code Laravel badges namespace, and everything in the tests directory as a def autoloading is in the Beyond Code Laravel badges tests namespace. All right, so let's get going. The first feature that we wanted to build is we want to be able to create badges. So since we want to create our tests first, the test would be it can create badges. And the test would look like something like this. So I would create a badge. And it has a name, so like 1-year membership. And maybe a description. Whoop. Granted to users that are members for more than a year. All right. And the actual test would be this. We assert that the badge exists. OK, so of course, this test is not going to pass because we don't have this badge class yet. So let's build it. So inside my source directory, I'm going to create a models folder, and we are going to create a badge class. And this class is going to extend from the Eloquent model. And to make our lives a little bit easier, I'm going to say that we don't have any guarded properties, so that when we create the badge in our test, we can just put in there whatever we want. OK, so let's import this class. And let's see what our test is going to say. A lot of things are going wrong. And that's the first thing is we have a call to a member function connection on null. And that's because our model is trying to save the data on a database connection. But since our test is just a regular PHP unit test case, it doesn't know that there's a framework behind, that we have a database connection that needs to be set up and things like that. So since we pulled in Orchestra Test Bench, we can just get rid of PHP unit test case and pull in the Orchestra Test Bench case. And now if we run the tests again, it still fails, but the error is different. So now we can see that the framework already booted up. So Orchestra Test Bench basically gives you a blank Laravel application that you can use to inject the package that you're building into it. And the error we get is that the user forge at localhost cannot connect to the database, and that's because the default Laravel configuration just uses MySQL with forge as a username. So I don't want people that want to collaborate on this package to install MySQL just to run the tests. So what we can do is we can go to our PHP unit XML file and tell PHP unit that it should set up an environment variable. So when we run the tests, go ahead and set up the db connection environment variable. to testing. And this is making use of the in-memory SQLite database that ships with Laravel. So if we run the tests again, we still get an error, but this time we are able to connect to the database. So our model is actually trying to save something, but we don't have the table. And that's because we don't have a migration yet. So let's go and build the migration next. The way I like to structure my packages is I have all my models, all my code inside the source directory, and everything else, like assets, lives in directories that resemble the database folder structure. So we have a database folder, then a migrations folder, and in here a PHP file, create badges table. All right. And this is going to become our migration. So these are not namespaced. So we can just create it, and this is going to extend from a migration. Let me import this. And there we have an up method. We use the schema, create our badges table. We have a blueprint for our table. And I'm going to import this because it's way too long. Like this. And then we can define our table just as you would do that in your regular application. So we have an ID, we have a name, and let's say we have a description and some timestamps. And I'm actually going to create a second table because we also want to associate the badges with some kind of models. So I'm going to create a table that is called badgeables. Badger. And this table is pretty simple. We just have an unsigned integer for our badge ID. And then we are using a morph relationship to associate the badge with whatever model we want to do. OK, so that's our migration. But now our test still doesn't know that the migration exists. So since migrations are just classes that perform an up method, we can just call the up method in our tests. So I'm just going to do a setup. We need this void called the parent setup method. And in here, we can just require this migration from here. And then we can just new it up and perform the up method. And with a bit of luck, it's green. So now our test knows about the migration, and our test can actually insert this badge model into the in-memory database that we have. OK, so this is not cool, but once someone installs your package, they don't know that you ship a migration with it, right? So the way that our package can tell the Laravel application that you install it to that we are going to publish some files is by using a service provider. So let's create a Laravel badges service provider class. We're just going to extend from the base service provider that ships with Laravel. And service providers basically have two methods. One is the register method, where we can add things to the IOC container. We don't need that right now. And the other one is the boot method, which gets called once all service providers have registered whatever they want to register. So in our boot method, what we're going to say is, hey, watch out, Laravel, we're going to publish some files. So we are going to publish our database create badges table file. And when you publish it, please move it to the database path inside the migrations folder, and then we're giving it the YMD HIS current timestamp, followed by create badges table.php. So the next time someone installs your package and runs php artisan vendor publish, Laravel is going to copy this migration file that we have created into the database path with the current timestamp in the file name. OK. So let's take a look at the second feature. The second feature we wanted to add was we want to associate a badge with some kind of model. So our test would be it can associate badges. It's a test. And our badge is going to look something like this. We want to create a badge. And the way I like to develop my packages is I just make up an API that I feel comfortable with and that I think is good to use. So it would be something like badge provider, grant 1-year membership to some kind of user class when a condition is true. So when the user created add date is less than now minus a year. So when the user is older than a year, we want to associate this badge to this user. And I think the API looks kind of nice, and that's the way I like to build these packages. Just make up the API that I would love to write, and then we try to make it work. So to actually test this, we would need a user. So we would need something like test user create. I want to make use of Laravel's built-in user table. So we need a name. We need an email. I think we need a password. And of course, we need the created add date. So we're saying created add is now minus 12 month. OK, so we have this in place. And the actual test would be something like we assert that the count of the user badges would be 1. So if we create a user that is over a year old, we want it to have 1 badge. OK, so a lot of things that aren't working here because we haven't built all of this yet. So let's start with the test user first, because that's the easiest one. So I'm just going to create a class inside my test here, which is going to extend from the user class that ships with Laravel. So once again, we don't have any guarded properties to make our lives a bit easier. And I'm going to say the table is users, because by default, Laravel would guess the table name to be test_users, and I don't want to use this. OK, so now this one's working. So to have this working, the badge association, I think it would be nice if our package would provide a trait that other models can implement and use in their models. So something like use has badges. And let's build this. Traits. Has badges is a trait. Now we can go back and import this. And all we need to do in this trait is we have a badges method, which is going to return the morph to many relationship to our badge class. The name of it is model. That's what we specified in the migration. And the table name was badgeables. OK, so if we go back to our test, this should work. We can retrieve the relations on the user. We have a user, but we don't have the badge provider yet. So let's build this as well. So in here, we're going to create a badge provider class. Doesn't extend anything, and it holds like 3 basic properties. So we grant the badge to a model when a condition is true. And our API would look something like grant badge. And then we just set this up and always return this so that we can easily chain the methods to a model. So once again, and the last method was when the condition is true. So this condition becomes condition, and in here we're going to apply the badges somehow. So let's add that. Who likes private anyway? OK. So like this. This would be like the easiest way how we can come up with a public API. And if we go back to our test, let's skip this facade call in here, or this static call, and instead we just new up a badge provider instance and call the methods on it. OK, so that looks good. Let's see what our test says. Oh, that's not so good. No such table users. So Orchestra Test Bench, as I said, it gives you a blank Laravel application, and the blank Laravel application comes with a user's migration as well, but this one is not executed by default with Test Bench. So what you can do in the setup method, we can just tell Test Bench to load the Laravel migrations, and we're good to go. So now when we run our tests again, it still fails, but now it's a good failure, because now it's nothing that's messed up in our tests, but the actual test fails because we expect it to have a count of 1, but instead we don't have any badges associated to that user. So let's make this work as well real quick. So to actually apply the badges, we first need to pull the badge from the database. So we have to say we get the badge where the name is equal to this badge, and then a first or fail. And then to actually apply it, what I thought would be cool is we do an event listener every time the model gets saved. So every time this model gets saved, we jump into this callback function. We have to use our badge in here. And in here, we're going to check if we call our condition with the model, and this is going to return true, then we want to associate the badge to this specific model. So then we're going to say model badges sync without detaching. I'll explain that in a bit, with the badge ID. And that basically just says, if the badge ID already exists, we're going to just add it once and keep everything else in place. So we never end up having the same badge associated to a model twice. Now, this is not like the perfect implementation. It hooks onto like the eloquent saved event, and it's just really good to show in this talk, but I wouldn't build it like this if it was a real application. Also, this needs to be a bit more fail-proof that this actually works. OK, but I think we have everything in place. So if we run the tests again, it's now green. So we can associate the badge to the user. And just to make sure, let's say that the user was created 11 months ago, and the test fails again, which is good. OK. Now, coming back to our test, what I actually wanted to do was I wanted to build the facade and make use of it like this. So I wanted to call badge provider grant, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go and create a facade as well. So we could make use of a real-time facade here, but for the sake of showing you how you can add these facades to your tests, we're going to build a real one. So I'm going to put this in the facades class, facades directory. And in here, I have my badge provider class, which is going to extend from the facade class that ships with Laravel. And then we have a get facade accessor method. And this one is telling Laravel, when someone is calling methods on this facade class, pull out this thing, this object, from the IOC container instead, and call the methods on this object. So in here, we can just pull out the badge provider implementation class that we have and use this one instead. OK, since we haven't bound that to the container. OK, so let's see what our test says. All right, it fails because it says the badge provider class cannot be found. So with Orchestra Test Bench, there's a cool way of telling it that we have this root class actually available. So in here, we can say get package aliases. And this is then going to return an array where we say the badge provider alias is going to be pointing to our badge provider facade class. Like this. OK. And now it's all green again. Our test knows that we have this facade in place, that it's in a root namespace that we can, or without any namespace at all, that we can just use it. like this. And yeah, that's all there is to basically facades, and there's no real magic about it. OK, so the next step would be to actually go and publish our package. I'm not going to do that right now on stage because I think seeing me push code to GitHub is not the exciting thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it up. I created a repository. It's called Laravel Badges. I'm going to tweet the link to the source code in a minute so you can check it out. But what you would need to do when you actually want to publish it, you push the code to GitHub, you tag a new release, and then all you basically need to do is you copy the GitHub URL, go to Packagist, and sign in with your GitHub username, paste it in here, and that's basically it. And then your package is available on Packagist. People can install it and start using it. And yeah, that's all I have. We build a package from scratch. If you want to know more about package development, I created a video course available at phppackagedevelopment.com, so you might want to check that out. And feel free to just talk to me around all the time here, so just come and say hi. Thank you.